I got married to Ernie Harry. I have 7 children. I have 5 boys, 2 girls, and they all grew up here in the Squamish Reserve. When I got married, we lived in a 2-room shack, and we had no electricity for a while. We had running water because Ernie managed to put running water in our house. We had coil oil lamps. We had a airtight heater, but we had a propane stove. That was luxury. A propane stove. Had no fridge. We had this big roasting pan, double roasting pan. We used it like a fridge. We put all our food in there. My children had a real good life here in Squamish. They had I always say the whole reserve was their playground.
My recollection is that we lived in a 2-room shack, and we had to walk about 30 yards to an outhouse.
Outhouse, yeah.
And so we had, it wasn't just 4 of us, like 6, 8 people that lived in a 2-room shack. And all it was is one room where you had the front room, bedrooms and everything in one room. Then the back was the
kitchen.
And it was a wood stove. It was an old, you cooked and everything was off a wood stove. And so that's where we had to go get wood. So our dad was always thought ahead, so we'd have to do all our wood chopping and everything in the summer, prepping, and he'd put it, store it and everything. And of course we grumbled because we wanted to be out playing in the nice beautiful days, and we'd be having to help him get the wood up.
Yeah.
And so every morning they'd get up, and early in the morning to make breakfast, they had to start the fire first, and they also had the airtight heater. So that was the heat of the house. The kitchen was a stove, and then the other room was a airtight heater that just warmed. That was the heat. Everything was done by
wood. Yeah.
There was originally, when we were there, if I recall, there was one road in. It was a dirt road that brought us into the house, and the rest was all nice trees. So when we were kids, we got to go run around and play. Our parents told us you can go so far as the track, so far as the mountain. You can't go to the beach. You can't go to the creek. Everywhere else we had freedom to go. And so every day we'd get up, and if we were young, we got to go play outside and have fun right through until they'd come out and tell us it's lunchtime or dinner time.
Yeah, or somebody holler for us. Yeah. Or Mom would holler out our name, and you can tell by the tone of her voice too if she's in a good mood or not. Yeah.
The tone got worse as the longer we took to get home.
Yeah.
So.
Or sometimes we'd go play down, like the beach was really out of bounds for us. But we loved it. Was just something that attracted us down there, and we went there quite a bit. And we always ended up getting caught, or somebody would squeal on me. Yeah. You
Going like that to me. I see that in the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
But as
we get heck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but growing up in that 2-room shack, it was something else. And it was a very close-knit, I guess say family and the reserve, really, because everybody was so close together. Mostly all relatives that lived around there. And our grandfather used to live down in the bottom of the hill. And Austin Harry, he was really hard of hearing. Yeah, really hard of hearing. But he always walked. He's a real strong old man.
I'm Alana Andrews, Chief of Squamish Nation. My ancestral name is Sleochtanat. I was born in Sliammon, 1930. My parents and my older sisters traveled back and forth from Sliammon to Squamish when we were young. And when I was about 7 years old, I was sent to residential school and spent 8 years in Seashelt Residential School. There we did not learn our traditions, we didn't learn our language, we were made to forget it. It's interesting to go different places. We went different places for the residential school. There was about 5 of us that were really interested in bringing out the things that the terrible things that happen in residential school. There we did not learn our traditions, we didn't learn our language, we were made to forget it. We traveled down the states up to Sliammon, Seashelt, Chilliwack, Lethbridge. It was fun in a way to get to know other people, know that we were not the only ones that suffered. All different tribes suffered. We don't do too much now because everything is out in the open.
I am Humptia, but I'm better known as Shirley Thomann. I was born here on the Squamish Reserve in a house, and my grandmother and my aunties brought me into the world. I was here with my mum because my dad was in the army. I hadn't met him, so not until I was about 5 or 6. This is my mom and dad when they got married. Before he went over to the Second World War. And I'm in the picture, by the way. She's pregnant with me. So I never met my dad until I was about 6 years old when he came home from the war. And he came knocking at the door at night. And my mom was over visiting her mom. And she told me, "Don't open the door for anybody," she said. "I'll be back soon. You just open the door for me when I come home." But then I heard the knock on the door, and he says, "Anybody home?" And I said, "Who is it?" And he says, "Is that you, Shirley?" And I said, I paused for a minute, and then I said, "Yeah." And then he said, "Oh, it's your daddy here." He said, "I'm your daddy. I was in the war." And I thought about it, and I said, "Oh, my daddy. Oh." So I opened the door, and not having met him before, but I knew that he was my dad, and I just threw my arms around him and jumped right on him, and he had to carry me inside the door, and I was just so happy to see my daddy, and he was, needless to say, he was very pleased that I didn't even know who he was.
My father and mother are strict, but I was learning from them. My dad is James Reed. My mom is Mary, Bones from Lillooet. Oh, my dad is from Squamish. His dad and his grandfather, both Squamish. Charlie Reid was my dad's dad. They had a long house down at Capilano, mouth of the Capilano River. And I suppose he had one up here too in Squamish. They don't tell me the whole story all at once. They just say a few words, and I had to remember it.
I was raised in Brackendale. I stayed there all my life. I didn't speak English until I was 12 years old. I went to the hospital. That's why I had to learn how to speak English. They gave me schooling in there. I got 3 years school in the hospital. I stayed there for 3 years, 10 months in Cocolitza and 2.5 years in Nanaimo Indian Hospital. I had TB glands. And my Uncle Alec lives in North Yards. He's doing okay. He lost his missus too, and he's doing all right.
Chapman at Gates. It's not because CHM. It's not because in Showy. The Showy goes to its stomach, goes to the cat squam. My name is Alec Williams. My Indian name is Alana Tanino. I lived here in Squamish all my life. I was a person that never went to school. Never went to school with anything. I don't know how to read and write, but I worked here and there all over. I lived in Squamish for many years with all the things we used to do. We had gardens, we had horses, we had cattle. We had everything on our own. We had the canoe that we're all, most of the time we spend our time in the river. We do our fishing. We didn't have to struggle. Nobody struggled. Until the age I was 13 years old. That's when I first started to go out. I went logging in a small Jippo outfit. I just kept on working until until the bigger outfits started to come in. They didn't want me then there because they figured I was underage, but I cheated my age. So then they took me. It had to go to my mother's consent before they ever took me out. So then after that, and we worked. Bigger outfit was coming all the time. And we worked, and then that was that. And then it wasn't very long, we see all the Indian boys come in as a logger. That made me happy when you see all the Indian boys start to come in as a logger. So I've been logging for good many years. Nothing else I ever knew. It's all of what I knew at all was a logging. It was kind of rough for the first year after they retired me. I didn't like it because I was to be out in the woods all my life. That was my second home. Was out in the bush, be a logger. And I loved it out there. Summer, rain, snow, you name it. We've had it. You got to be tough to be out there. And you got to know what you're doing.